I do remember seeing my stepmom and dad kiss.
What did you feel?
And it felt funny at first. I can feel it. It was like, oh, they like each other. They have a romance in their life that I don't think my mom and dad, at least I didn't see that, because I was seeing the loss, the end of something that now has been rebirthed in a new relationship.
Hey, welcome. This is Family Life Blended, and I'm Ron Deal. This donor-supported podcast helps blended families and those who love them pursue the relationships that matter most. This is episode number 87, Well Blended. And no, I don't mean well done as in steak, okay? I'm talking about a family that is blending well. What are the qualities of a well-blended family? Better yet, is there a convenient online course that will help you become well-blended? As a matter of fact, there is. Hang on, we'll get to that in just a minute. But before we do, a quick reminder that this podcast is, in fact, donor-supported, and that our next matching gift opportunity is coming up real soon, September 1st through the 16th. That's right, it leads right up to National Stepfamily Day, which is September 16th. You see, we've had some generous donors come alongside us, and they're providing a matching gift. In other words, if you would give any amount, it will be doubled during those first 16 days of September. So would you mind just maybe saying a word of prayer about how you can join us during this really important time? There's a donation link in the show notes if you want to know more. We really appreciate it. Not long ago, I was interviewed for the Family Life Today radio program. Now, if you're not familiar with Family Life, you might not know that we have had a daily international radio broadcast called Family Life Today since 1992. Through the years, I've been honored to be a guest on that program many, many times. And periodically, we will take one of those interviews from that radio broadcast and play it here for you. We want you to hear what we were sharing with our Family Life Today audience. So the first voice you'll hear is Dave Wilson, who will be joined by his wife, Ann Wilson. They're the current hosts of the program. And we were talking about this new online on-demand course that we've created that you can do at your own pace from the comfort of your own home. The course is called Well Blended. Of course, we wanted to tell the Family Life Today listeners about that, and now we want to give you a preview of that course. Here we go.
But you're in the studio today talking about some online courses. I didn't even know how many different ones we have, but talk about what we are now offering, and is it a new thing?
Yeah, man, Family Life has been actually working on this for a couple of years, and COVID has sort of slowed all this down. But as of right now, we have 8 online courses, online on demand, which of course means that people can move through these courses on their own time, in their own way, at their own pace. Sit at home, being comfortable, and do the online course and just sort of move through it in a way that serves you. And we have 8 courses. I mean, the Love Like You Mean It course, Bob Lapine's based on his book and video series. The Nearly Complete Guide to Better Married Sex. Hey, that sounds like a fun one to do.
Wait. What's nearly complete?
Yeah, well, nothing is absolutely complete, right? Separate and apart from God and His holiness.
True.
Next to that, we have the Nearly Complete Guide to Better Married Sex. Financial Freedom for Couples, How to Talk Money in Marriage. Light Bulb Moments with Jeff and Shanti Feldhahn. Our own Brian Goins teamed up with some people and put together a series for men. It's called Chaos, a bold theory on manhood. Again, all of these are online and on demand. We now have 2 courses that are specifically about blended families and blended family ministry. For leaders, we have one called the Certificate in Blended Family Ministry, which is like a mini course that you can go through that basically gives you the basic understandings of how to set up a ministry in your church, what it entails, what it looks like, what the options are. We're very excited about that one. But the one we're going to be talking about today is a course designed for couples. And it's meant to help them improve their marriage and their blended family situation. And it's called Well Blended.
So that's where this whole well blended idea came from. So let's talk. What does well blended mean? What's it entail?
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me turn it around for a minute. Let me ask you a question. Well, and we'll hear some clips and listen to some pieces of this. How long did it take the two of you? I mean, once you started having children, how long did it take each of you to look at the other and go, oh my goodness, this person is completely committed to loving this child that we have just had together? How long did that take?
That's a good question.
My first thought is seconds. You know, when I mean, in the hospital.
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking at Ann, and I'm not sure I've seen a love for our child like that. I mean, a little jealous in some ways. Like, I wish you loved me the same way. But it was instant, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, I would say the same for you. Like, you were all in. Absolutely. Yeah. Why do you ask that question, Ron?
Well, the truth of the matter is probably even before the child was born, you guys
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
right?
You're already connected.
And that's exactly the point. It was automatic. When it's your child, a shared child, that you've had the pleasure of creating together in God's good grace, it's just unquestioned that the other person is absolutely committed to loving this child and is going to see it through. Well, in a blended family, you can imagine that's a journey for step-parents and step-children to look at one another with the same sort of commitment to loving them. I'm not questioning step-parents and their desire to want to have a great relationship with their stepchildren. The desire is often there, but the know-how, and sometimes there's moments where it's pretty common for them to wobble a little bit. I just got an email today from somebody, a stepdad, who's trying so hard, and he's just like, I can't figure out the secret sauce to connecting with these kids, and he's just wrestling with that.
Right? Well, Ron, I remember, my dad was remarried when I was in probably 8th grade. I think it was 7th or 8th grade. I can remember going down to see him in Florida, where he lived with his new wife. And her friends came over, and I remember this. This is interesting. I remember her saying, oh, this is Dave's son. My dad's name was Dave. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm not your son. And it took a while. I can't tell you how long, but it was a while, probably more than a year. Of course, I wasn't living with them. I was in and out of her life, but it took her a while before she was saying, this is our son. So it's exactly what you're saying. It wasn't instantaneous.
Right. There's the wobble,
yeah.
Right? In biological families, it's instantaneous, nanoseconds at most. In blended families, it's a bit of a journey, and sometimes there's some wobbles in the process. Okay, all of this brings us to our first clip from the new Well Blended online on-demand course. This is me speaking at our 2019 Blended and Blessed live stream. In biological families, love, trust, safety, that sense of dedication to one another, the sense that I can trust you as my parent, I can trust you as my spouse, this is our child, that there is no difference between us. All of that comes the day the children are born, the moment they're born. It is an automatic dynamic. Love, trust, safety, emotional trust with one another all comes as a bundle immediately. In blended families, turns out that happens to be a bit of a process. Love and affection for one another sometimes comes last. And what sets you up to be able to get to love and affection for one another is a sense of trust, a sense of safety with one another. If I, as a stepchild, can't trust you as my step-parent, how in the world would I ever get to love you as my step-parent? I think faithfulness and gentleness, two of the fruit, set you up to discover and experience trust and safety that then leads to love and affection. So getting faithfulness and gentleness right is a really important process. So let's start with faithfulness. The Beatles sang it, all you need is love. It ain't true. And it's funny when you say that out loud. Like people sometimes go to me, what? That's not right. Come on, all you need is love, right? That's the mantra. It feels good. It's romantic. There's a sense that if you say it's not true, that somehow you're kind of saying love is not enough, but we all know intuitively love is not enough. What is love without faithfulness? What is love without a sense of trustworthiness? If your partner in a marriage relationship isn't trustworthy, how far does love get you in that relationship? At best, love without faithfulness leads to doubt and insecurity. It's like, I love you, but I don't know if I can lean into you. And at worst, it leads to hurt and isolation. And we all intuitively know it. All we have to do is just stop and think about it. This September, we've got a new book coming out. I've written a book with Greg Pettis and David Edwards on stepfamilies and finances. I'm very excited about the project. We've finally integrated the relational dynamics of stepfamily living with the financial dynamics going on within the home. And one of the stories that we tell in this book is about there's a designer in the Netherlands who has created, are you ready for this? He's created a floating prenuptial house, all right? And here's the way it works. The house is somehow like two Tetris shapes that are knit together with one another, and they fit together. And the idea is you find the love of your life, and you get married, and you live in this home. It's a houseboat, so it's a floating prenuptial house. And if anything ever goes wrong in your marriage relationship and you decide to go your separate ways, if you drift apart as a couple, you can just unhook the Tetris shapes, and he can go in his half, and she can go in her half, and you can drift apart, literally, and each have a home. Now, when you talk about that and you say that story out loud, you just intuitively go, that's not going to work. Like, everybody knows that's a setup. That is planning to fail, right? Everything in that whole process says we marry and we move into this house so that when we go our separate ways, it's really convenient for us to go our separate ways. That's a setup to fail. There's no sense of trustworthiness or faithfulness in that process. By the way, in the finances book, we want to do the opposite. We want to help you take your single and single parent or whatever your dynamic is, two Tetris shapes of finances that you already have, and we want to help you put it together and finance togetherness. But when you think about it in the opposite way, we all know that's not going to work. Without a sense of permanence, there's no trust. And without trust, how do you sustain intimate love in a relationship? Love is not all you need.
Well, Ron, I can't believe you disagreed with my John Lennon and the Beatles. But I have to agree with you. Love is not enough. The trust and faithfulness that you just talked about, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, and I think it's good to know that it does take time as we learn to trust each other. Even that connection with a step-parent or a stepchild is a process, and that trust and love can take time. Mm-hmm. But Ron, I really think, I'm guessing that a lot of blended families are comparing themselves with maybe a ghost that's saying, everybody else, it probably did happen instantaneously.
Yeah. Oh, that can be kind of haunting them. When they look at other families, for example, that seem to have that harmony, cohesiveness, and you feel divided in your life, in your home, it's, that's disconcerting and discouraging for people. I think this notion that love needs faithfulness to go with it is really an important point. Let's just pause for a minute and think vertically, as you guys like to do. And let's think about the love of God and how often in Scripture the love of God is communicated to us along with his faithfulness and trustworthiness. I want you to think about that. Like, it is often that they are mentioned side by side. Not every time, but that's part of it. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you is a statement of his faithfulness, his trustworthiness. I'm here, period, end of story, not going away. Right? And you think about Psalm 136 that says his love endures forever. Look at that. It's coupling his love. How long? Forever. Endures. You can count on it. It puts them together, love and faithfulness. And it says it 26 times, by the way, in that one chapter. What if the story about God was his love endures as long as you do everything he says and never make a mistake?
Right.
Guys, where would we be? What kind of life would we have with the Heavenly Father if we lived in fear of doing one thing wrong and he's going to turn on us? Love goes away. Safety goes away. We can't count on him anymore because I've failed in some aspect of our life. Just think about that. Think about if the Heavenly Father did to us what we often do as parents to our kids. Sort of convey that message of, I love you as long as you make me happy. I love you as long as you perform well in school, as long as you get the grades, you get the degree and go into the profession we want you to go. Whatever those conditions are that sometimes parents inadvertently, sometimes purposefully, but most of the time inadvertently put on their kids, what if that was God? I think we'd live in complete fear of God. He wouldn't be safe and approachable and somebody we can go to with our failings and our faults and ask for forgiveness. All of a sudden, because love is conditional, it could go away. Now we're worried all the time.
Yeah, and as you say that, I'm thinking that is so true in a family, in a marriage relationships at the same level. I know that one of the things I tried to do when we have 3 sons that are married now, but when they were boys in our house and they would see Ann and I maybe get in a conflict, you could see them, whether it's in the family room or kitchen tables, there's a sense of fear, like, what's going on with mom and dad? And every once in a while, I didn't do this perfectly, but every once in a while I would turn to them and say, hey, just so you know, dad's not going anywhere. We're going to work this out. This is part of what happens when you're in love. You sometimes have conflicts, but it's that faithfulness that, I hope you know that you can still trust me. And I'm thinking, okay, in a family where there's one husband and one wife, that's really important. I can't imagine how important it is when a family now is blended, because there's already been some lack of trust in some way. There's all kinds of reasons why it ends up blended, but there's got to be that fear sitting there with the kids as well, right?
Exactly. And sometimes in a blended family situation, let's say husband and wife are having some strife, not only is there the sense of the kids are watching, is this creating insecurity for them? But sometimes it's flipped on its head. The kids are watching, are they getting happy that we're having conflict? Are they sort of okay if we were to be pulled apart by what's going on? And that too just adds a sense, I can't trust my environment in this house to support the marriage that we're trying to fight for. I mean, think about that. Like, without that sense of confidence that comes with faithfulness and trustworthiness, everybody walks on pins and needles. It's sort of like we're living with a lack of security about the future. That's why we talk about in this new course, Well Blended, how important it is. I got to repeat that each person walk with integrity and faithfulness in order to build trustworthiness over time in the new blended family dynamic. As long as there's a lack of trustworthiness, well, we're insecure, we're walking on pins and needles, who knows what's going to happen. But you know what? My stepdad, I'm not sure I like him, but my goodness, I can count on him. You know what? I sort of love him on certain days, and other days, I'm not so sure. But my goodness, he is a man of his word. He has integrity. You know, my stepmom, I'm still trying to figure her out. We're still trying to connect and, see how deep our relationship can go. But I don't have to worry that she's just going to throw me to the side or cast me away. She's not a wicked stepmother. She's a loving stepmother who's committed to me. She's proven that. That sort of stuff really begins to overcome those doubts and insecurities that people have about one another, and it facilitates that bonding and connection that the family has to have to move forward.
I like those, Ron. And practically speaking, what other things can we do to develop that trust? What's that look like?
Yeah, well, I guess the first one I already said, just be faithful in the little things. Like, and let's emphasize little. Like, if you say you're going to be there, show up, to the best of your ability. Be true to your word, and don't underestimate, if you break your word, how that can harm this fragile relationship. See, that's sort of what we're saying, is that some step-family relationships, not always all, but often in the beginning, many, are just sort of fragile. And so it doesn't take much to fracture it. So you want to be true to your word. You want to stick that out. You want to be trustworthy in the marriage. You want to show them, I'm committed. You and I, step-parent, stepchild, we may not have each other figured out yet, but I want you to see that I'm committed to your mom, your parent. I want you to see that that's true to my heart. I'm going to be right by her, by him, whatever the case is. And that helps a child gain a little confidence in who they are. This theme, the clip that we just listened to, our theme for Blended and Blessed that year was out of Galatians 5. We were talking about the fruits of the Spirit. Well, right before the fruit of the Spirit, in Galatians 5, he talks about the works of the flesh. So let's just say this. One of the ways you break trust and show yourself not to be trustworthy is by living those works of the flesh, jealousy and envy and strife and, pride. And, okay, obviously, when people see that in you, it becomes harder for them to want to trust you, to lean in to who you are. And so there's a discipline there. Make sure you're walking by the fruit of the Spirit rather than the works of the flesh.
Yeah, I could even add, Ron, I know watching my dad in his second marriage, he had to prove to his new wife that he was going to control his sensuality. Mm-hmm. That sort of led to the divorce with my mom and dad. And it was like, okay, I have to earn trust, prove faithfulness that I'm a new man, and that's no longer who I am, and that's not something I'm going to pursue anymore. And I remember as a middle school boy and then a high school boy watching my dad sort of change his whole life, which built trust, not only with me, but definitely with my stepmom.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. In fact, this brings me back to that initial point that we made. Love without trustworthiness really doesn't get you very far in a relationship. And again, here's an obvious example that you just brought up, but it helps to make the point. We've all known situations where somebody had an affair, and maybe it was something you lived through, or maybe it was something a friend of yours went through. Well, let's just say the wife had an affair. Well, she can say to her husband, "I love you." Those feel like empty words in the midst of an affair or right after. Like, okay, you've ended that, but it's still to be determined really now, what does your love mean to me? So you have feelings for me, you love our family, our kids, the idea of us, but can I trust you? At that point, there's been a huge fracture in trust. Love only gets you so far. It takes both. And so for you in that situation with your dad, well, he had already proven something else, that maybe he wasn't trustworthy. And now he had to get back on the right track, and he had to start walking that and maintain his integrity. Otherwise, that sort of ghost, like Ann said earlier, that ghost sort of haunts and just hangs around the room, making people wonder, will this relationship last?
And the hard thing, but the good thing about trust is you have to not just earn it one time. There's got to be consistency. I watched my dad have to not, it's like 1 month, 2 months. Okay. Is he really going to live this out? But over 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, it's like, okay, trust is rebuilt. It takes a long time. It's torn down in a second.
That's
right.
Right.
Rebuilt over a long time. But man, that's exactly what you're talking about. Integrity is proven over time.
And you can forgive somebody for something that tears down the trust. Forgiveness can be there, but trust not there for a long period of time, like you just said. One of the things that occurs to me, there's other ways to build trust. One of them is to discipline our tongues.
Yeah.
The words that we say is one of those things, Dave, that just can tear down trust fast, right? So being overly critical of your partner, of children, of people, being angry and having a temper and showing yourself to be, oh, you're that kind of person that I'm supposed to run in fear from. You scare me because of how you react. To discipline ourselves in that manner. Hey, let me throw another one in for blended families is not being critical of the other home. So let's say you're the mom and the stepdad, to be an overly critical mom of her former husband in front of her kids, or for the stepdad to be critical of the biological dad. The kids just look at you and go, okay, nope, you're out. Harsh judgments come quickly because of the words that we use. And so to restrain your words, to put a bridle on them, say kind things or don't say anything at all, as my mom used to say. That really matters. It doesn't feel like a lot today, but over time, those little things can really build up trust. And then the last thing I'll just add for step parents is we like to talk about being stubborn, stubbornly persistent in continuing to pursue the heart of your stepchildren. Rejection sometimes happens. Sometimes they're not rejecting you. They're just not necessarily open to you either. And those are discouraging times. Continuing to press in, just being gentle, staying right there on the nip of their heels. So if they ever turn around, you're right there and you can have a relationship. That persistence, stubborn persistence, often we find pays off over time.
Ron, this is so helpful. And it's only a glimpse of what families can get online with this course.
Yeah, and I was thinking, man, oh man, what would have been like if we would have had a course like that when my family blended? You know, there were a lot of things, even as I hear you, Ron, that my dad and even my mom never did talk bad about my dad after he left. And my stepmom never talked bad about my mom. So they did some things, but I can remember as a kid just not knowing what to do. What is our new reality? There was not really any help available. There were not classes or courses, and now we have this course. Way to go. And I'm just going to tell you, you're a blended family, or you're starting one, or maybe you've been in it for years and you still haven't. Go online to FamilyLifeToday.com and order the course, Well Blended, and I'm telling you, it's going to change your life.
You were 6 when your parents got divorced.
Oh, you want to go back there?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
And then you were 13 when your dad got remarried and you entered into a blended family. What were some of your first memories of that?
Well, I've shared it here before. My first memory was I met my stepmom on a trip to Europe with my dad and my stepmom. He was an airline pilot. It was sort of cool. We could fly free around the world. And so we went to Europe and Italy, and I did not know it till years later. It was their honeymoon. And so the first night they give me a hotel room across the hall from them. We're in another country. I'm 13 years old. I'm scared to death. And I go over and knock on the door and sleep on their floor in their bedroom because I was so scared.
On their honeymoon
night.
Not
knowing this is their honeymoon night. I mean, can you imagine? And they never said anything like, you can't do this. It was just like, oh yeah, come on in. But that's my first memory. And I didn't even know it at the time. I am stepping into a whole new reality, and I have no idea. I don't think any of us did. I don't think my dad did, or my stepmom. And
I'm sure most people are. It's new.
yeah, it's like, we are now in a new reality, and how do we navigate that? And every family's that way. We were that way when we got married. But if you think about a blended family or a step family, man, oh man.
It just gets a little more complicated.
It's complicated, so they need help. Talk about, how do you help families that are blending? It's a new reality. What's that look like?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. I also want to let people know that, like you said, we do have so many resources now. I have to just say, the Christian community has been slow to kind of jump on this bandwagon to create resources for blended families from a biblical perspective. But I'm so proud of Family Life. For the last 10 years that I've been here, we've been creating all kinds of resources. And I tell people now you got too many options. You're going to have to decide what avenue you like to get it. Are you a reader? Are you a watcher? Are you a listener? Because we have all of that stuff. We've got podcasts, the Family Life Blended podcast. We've got books and resources.
Yeah, haven't you written like 48 books or something now, Ron?
Yeah, maybe not that many, but a number of them. Me and others on our team, actually, we've got 10 or 12 books that are available just through our ministry. We've got video series. We got 8 small group series now that are available to people. Did you know that? 8 small group series.
I would guess most people don't even know that.
They don't. In fact, I quizzed some people on our Family Life staff this week, and they didn't know that. We have so many things that people can choose now. And we're talking today about this new online course that we have. I am thrilled about because it's so accessible. You could be anywhere and move at your own pace through this new online on-demand course offered by Family Life, along with a number of other courses we have. And the one we're talking about is Well Blended. It's a collection we've kind of pulled from events that we've done and podcasts that we've produced and different things, and we've put it all together in a very structured way. So again, through your computer, sitting at home, at your pace and your convenience, you can move through this course, and it's just really been fun putting this together and making it available.
What else is loaded in this course?
Yeah, so one of the things we talk about in Well Blended is, the journey of finding family unity, connecting relationships, building those, and some of the challenges that happen along the way. Our listeners may know that every year in the spring, we put on a live event. It's also a live stream event. It's sent all over the world, and you can participate from wherever you live. And it's called Blended and Blessed. Each one of those over the last 5 years has been collected and is available online as well as a small group study, something you can go through as a couple. And then we do a new event with new speakers, a new theme every year. Well, in 2018, our Blended and Blessed event, we had a panel discussion. And they're talking about some of the challenges that they faced building family unity. Let's listen.
We've been married almost 11 years, and we were blessed to have a stepfamily ministry at the church we were attending at the time. In fact, I think that Grace in Middleburg Heights is tuning in today. And so we went through the class and we read Ron's book, and we thought that was going to be our map. But as we would leave class, we would talk, and we were like, those poor suckers. We love each other and we love God, and we are not going to have problems like those people, right? Our kids get along. We go to the park. This is going to be great. And Andy's ex-wife, when she left him, she left the family. So his girls haven't seen their mom in over 13 years. I've never met her. And I considered myself a good mom, a good single mom. And I thought, wow, I am going to go in. I am going to love these girls. I am going to be their mom. And this is going to be great. And I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, and I naively thought,
that's going to be us.
That's going to be us. And then we got married, and everything changed. And I tried to force the dream in my head, because the dream in my head was a good dream. It was kids getting along. It was a husband and wife walking with God and serving God. But I forgot about the loss. And a couple years in, it dawned on me that a step family is founded on loss. A step family cannot occur without a death, divorce, or unpartnering occurring. And while remarrying and meeting Andy, the first godly man in my life was a second chance at love. And I felt like, God was, giving me what I deserved, because I forgave my ex-husband. I was walking with him. I was getting what I deserved. But I forgot that even though the remarriage is a second chance at love for him and I, it's a permanent reminder to our kids that their mom and dad will never be together again. And what was started in love was a reminder of loss.
Things can be moving along well, and it will catch you by surprise because it's been going in a good direction. And I think that at times the marriage actually cements the reality of the situation for people. That's when it really starts to set in. I think it was said earlier today too, like when you move in, you're sharing a house and a bathroom now with maybe somebody you don't like.
Yeah.
Right? And so for us, right, the reality, just, coming back from the honeymoon, right? You come back, you find out, okay, the 6 kids have been fighting, the stepdog is peed on the rug, the whole deal, right? It's like,
that's a
sky's
metaphor.
falling. I'm glad we had that 48 hours together.
Yeah, I've actually never thought about the stepdog.
Honestly, that is what they talked about is so wise. I wouldn't think about, as a stepmom coming in, the loss. The kids are experiencing incredible loss, and it's important to be there and sit there and to really realize what they have gone through. That would be hard as a step parent coming in when you're super excited.
Exactly. And just imagine, like, you're excited to spend time with Dave and, hold his hand and kiss him on the cheek or smack him on the lips or whatever. And in that moment when you're giving him a big old kiss, it sort of dawns on you, oh, wait a minute. His kids are watching. My kids are watching. And this is evidence that mom and dad are never going to get back together again.
Right.
How divided would you feel in that moment? Like, there's a part of you that wants to move towards your husband and enjoy that. And at the same time, you're maybe feeling a little guilty about it. How odd is that dynamic? That's one of those push-pull dynamics that's fairly common in blended families, especially in the early years. And it makes people just sort of think twice. Do I kiss him? Do I hold his hand? Do I show that affection in front of the children? Or is that somehow creating some angst for them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I never even thought about it as, a stepson to my stepmom. She probably was thinking that. And is this going to be a trigger for your stepson or daughter? And
Especially when you're so loyal to your mom.
yeah, and I've never considered, again, that's what blended's all about, is things we never think about are the reality for families that are trying to blend. And again, you're talking about, let's do this blended well.
Yes.
So that makes it even difficult.
Right. And so, Dave, I would kind of kick it back to you. It may not have been your experience, but I'm curious. If you saw affection between your dad and your stepmom, do you ever feel a little strange about that?
I can see it right now in my mind's eye. I mean, this is 40 years ago or more, 50 years ago, on a boat on a lake with my mom and dad, and my dad and my stepmom, and seeing them kiss as I was getting on the skis behind the boat. I mean, that's how, real the visual is in my mind, and thinking that is so weird. I don't remember seeing my mom and dad kiss. I do remember seeing my stepmom and dad kiss.
What did you feel?
And it felt funny at first. And I can feel it. It was like, oh, they like each other. They have a romance in their life that I don't think my mom and dad, at least I didn't see that, because I was seeing the loss, the end of something that now has been rebirthed in a new relationship. And it felt a little weird to me. Like, am I supposed to celebrate this, or am I mad about this?
So you can imagine if your dad and stepmom happened to catch your face in that moment.
Right.
Instead of a big smile, mom and dad love each other, it was maybe a question mark on your face, sort of I'm not sure where to put this. Or how do I think about this? That's that push-pull moment where we have different levels of motivation towards being family. You as a child even have a different level of motivation towards the happiness of their marriage.
Right.
And it's just an odd little circumstance. Now, for somebody listening right now who's in a blended family marriage, they're thinking, okay, great. What do we do about that? How do we fix how our kids feel about us, being in love with each other? Well, obviously you don't fix that on your timing, but what you can do is be sensitive to it, be aware of it. And I can imagine somebody even turning if they catch a child's reaction and just saying it out loud. Right then I was kissing, your mom. And I kind of think maybe you felt a little strange about that. You know what? It's okay. That's all right. It's really all right. Kids in blended families often experience that. So it's all right with me. I'm just curious. What were you feeling? And then you open a door to a conversation that's perhaps about loss, perhaps about, I don't know, I just sort of feel weird. Or, honestly, I never saw my parent kiss my other parent the way they just kissed you. And I'm not sure what to do with this. I like you. I mean, you can have those sort of candid conversations with somebody. Here's the thing, back to our conversation in yesterday's broadcast, you're creating avenues for trust to be built. You're showing yourself to be someone who's not freaked out or skittish by a kid's reaction to you kissing your partner. You're not fragile. I think the child and you can talk about this.
I love that, Ron, because I'm imagining many step-parents coming in could feel rejection. And when they feel rejection from the children, then they pull away. And they take it personally. And then there's strain in the relationships. So just having that conversation, and if the kids are making a face or they're not happy about it, probably that whole thing is, you can say to yourself, this isn't necessarily about you. They're struggling with their own things. I think that's really good, though, to bring it out in the open and to talk about it in a way that's making the kids feel like, hey, what are you feeling? That could be really weird.
Right.
Wise.
Make it okay.
Yeah.
Now, is that something you sort of cover in the online course to help?
It is.
Families
As a matter
do
of fact, we got another clip, Dave. A perfect lead in. Thanks for that. So in this well-blended course that people can do on their own, from home, we in this panel discussion with Andy and Heather, we also had another couple, Stanley and Myrna. And let's listen to them talk about, because they felt that push-pull in their family too.
You have to be persistent and consistent and intentional in trying to bring together, because we came together because, we fell in love, and the kids kind of came on as part of the package deal. They did not have really a big voice in that. And so what do you do to along the way to bring everybody together? And one of the things we did in our family, and that is to really be intentional, because our kids were older, so it wasn't, some families, what they'll do, they'll go on family vacation together. And when they're small, you can bring the kids along. But when they're older and on their own, they don't necessarily have to follow your lead there.
Good point.
But one of the things we do is that we have like a family dinner every once a month there. So an intentional way for us to bring together. Sometimes everybody show up. Sometimes maybe one or two of the kids show up there. But we just a time for relaxing and bonding and basically trying to build those connection points.
I'm hearing there, we call those rituals, points of connection. We're going to keep doing this. This is part of the new us, and we're going to just keep doing that. I'm also hearing once a month. That's not very often. It's hard to make progress, I would think. Yeah? So was it slow going, and how did you be okay with it being slow going?
Well, like I said, when the kids are older like that, you have to kind of, you're not trying to force anything. You want to be intentional, but also not force anything. So therefore, you want to make it available and try to make it so that they can come, per se. Because if you try to do something once a week and they're off living their own life, it's going to be really tough for them to do that.
Yeah. How about you guys? Hetzlers, you guys, any rituals that you've kind of built along the way, even if it by accident, that have been helpful?
Yeah, it was interesting because I came in with a lot of rituals and traditions with my kids, and Andy did not. And my kids were protective. They didn't really want to share some of those rituals with their step-siblings. So we ended up, I think that's one of the things that we really try to be flexible and intentional. And so we've kind of created a lot of different traditions in our family. And the one thing that we've had to let go of is that holidays are when you're together, not just a date on the calendar. And so, for Thanksgiving, we don't have the kids most Thanksgiving, so we do turkey bowling. And now we go, during just the week of that last week in Thanksgiving, we pick a day and we go bowling with the kids. And the first couple years, they complained and they didn't want to go. And now, are we going? What day are we going? I want to make sure I schedule it. And they look forward to it. And we do some things for their birthdays that are special. And we've just tried to learn to kind of holidays are just difficult, especially when you have a child who is missing another parent, whether they're deceased or they're just not in their life. And so we're very sensitive. We invented this thing called Daughter's Day for Mother's Day because my kids wanted to celebrate me, but my stepdaughters have a really hard time every Mother's Day because their mom's not there. And I never want to force them to celebrate me as their mom. But now 10 years in, they do recognize me. But we just celebrate all the women in our house. So Mother's Day, Andy celebrates all the women in the house. And we just did the flip on Father's Day, we do Son's Day. And so we celebrate all of our sons. And so we make it more about the people than the role. And we've just learned to have to be flexible on that.
Wow. As I hear that, I'm triggered. It's like...
Really? In what way?
Well, I mean, it was weird. I had a couple thoughts. One was, and you know this, and I would get on a plane on Christmas morning every year to fly from Ohio, where my mom and I lived, to see my dad. It was a ritual. And again, I could fly free. So I remember back in those days, we're talking in the 60s, nobody's on the plane. There was nobody flying. It was me and some flight attendants, and they took care of me because they felt sorry for me. What's this? Wow. 10-year-old, 9-year-old, 11-year-old boy doing on a flight by himself on Christmas Day, And I remember I really hated it because I went from a white Christmas in Ohio to palm trees, and I didn't like palm trees for Christmas. But I do also, Ron, when I was listening to that, I also remember when I would go down at 14 and 15 years old. Now I had a stepmom, and she understood what I was going through, and she made it good. I remember Did
she create new traditions?
Yeah, she was full of joy. She had Christmas presents for me. We never talked about it, but I know now that she saw, man, this poor kid, this is Christmas Day, and he has to travel from his mom to his stepmom and his dad. I'm going to make it a good memory, and it became a good memory. But again, so many families don't even know how to navigate that whole thing. So that's what this is what you're talking about, right?
Well, I thought, Dave, too, it was really helpful to listen to the panel just to get ideas. Like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So helpful.
Love the creativity that they came up with, and love that your stepmom, Dave, did the same thing.
Yeah.
She found a way. She saw the need. She had some compassion for this transition that you were forced into making on Christmas Day of all days.
Yeah, and
you know?
even as I was listening to it, Ron, I'm thinking there are blended families who have never had this conversation until right now. They just heard it on this broadcast. They're going to get the online course, and it's going to force them to go, hey, there's something we need to talk about that we have never talked about. It just hit me like how valuable this can be for a blended family.
Yeah, and I love the thing about building little points of connection for people. Sometimes when the people hear, somebody's listening to us right now, and they're realizing, oh, we have a tradition. I just never thought of it in that way. And it happens every Sunday night, blah, 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 whatever it is. It happens every Thursday when we pick up the kids from school, da, da, da. Or, maybe it's every other week when the kids come back from the other house. We always go get ice cream. Yes, those are important points of connection, and they begin to help children switch from one home to the next. And it's a reminder that, okay, I'm with these people, and this is how life works in this home, and these people care for me. And don't underestimate the power of those little moments to help further your family. Now, a couple things that I just had to comment on based on what we just heard. You remember Heather's comment, the kids complained at first. We held on to some of our old traditions that were single parent home traditions, and then we had to begin to create some new ones, and the kids complained at first. And they just kept going, kind of a gentle persistence, right? And then they started asking, when are we going to do that thing? All right, now this has meaning. It's become a tradition. It's helpful for people,
right?
And it's a part of our new us. Okay, listen to that, guys. That's how you develop a new family identity, is you got to have something that's us. And it's all those little things put together, of course, over time. But when it crystallizes and it becomes something we expect from one another, we hope for, we look forward to, okay, all right, now I know where I belong and with whom I belong. That's a really good moment in the life of a blended family. You've been listening to my conversation with Dave and Ann Wilson on the Family Life Today radio broadcast. I'm Ron Deal, and this is Family Life Blended. Now, if you want to jump into that online course, it is really easy to do. Just take a look at the show notes. They will get you all linked up, okay? And hey, I want you to know something. All of our resources, our live and virtual events, our products, they all apply to various kinds of blended families. We had a guy write to us recently who said, I had a daughter out of wedlock. Can you do an episode speaking to single parents like myself that have never been married and have kids? He went on to explain that when he listens, sometimes he feels like our podcast is talking to somebody else and that he sort of has to translate the conversations that he hears, like about ex-spouses, for example, and translate that into something that will apply to he and his ex-girlfriend. And I just want to say, dude, you got it. That's exactly what you need to do. Translate what you hear on our podcast into your situation. So whether you're listening right now and you're divorced or you're widowed, or you don't have any kids, but you married somebody who does, or you're an empty nest, but it seems like we're always talking about families with younger kids. Hey, whatever your circumstances are, make the principles that you hear on our program work for your situation. And I want you to know this too. When we develop resources like my Smart Step Family series of books or this well-blended course or this podcast, we really are mindful of people in a variety of blended family situations. And we always try to throw something in there for you. Now, not everything applies to every family, of course, but a lot of it will. So you got it, man. Just keep translating into your situation. Hey, this reminds me, if you have a topic or a question that you'd like for us to address on a future podcast, you can email us or leave us a voice message. The show notes will tell you how to do that. And please remember to give us a quick review or share feedback with us. Man, we love hearing from our listeners. It's good to know what you're thinking, what you're wondering about, what you're reacting to. And don't forget our Summit on Step Family Ministry. It's coming up soon. It's going to be in Phoenix this year, October 13 and 14, 2022. If you're wondering what this event is about, it is an event aimed at helping you to help others. Yeah, it's open to pastors and couples that lead small groups and church leaders. It's a 2-day in-person event, not virtual. You got to be there. So go to summitOnStepFamilies.com and look for all the information. We'd love to see you face to face. Okay, next time, we've got a bunch of bonus episodes coming your way answering your questions. Gayla, Grace, and I, and a few other guests, we're going to be talking back to you. You've been submitting questions, and so we're going to spend a few episodes just trying to answer some of those questions. Watch for these bonus episodes. They're going to be dropping all week. I'm Ron Deal. Thanks for listening. And thanks to our monthly donors who make this podcast possible. If you'd like to help or just say thank you for what this podcast offers you, just look in the show notes for a link. Every dollar counts. Our producer is Marcus Holt, mastering engineer Jarrett Roski, project coordinator Ann Ancaro, and theme music composed and performed by Braden Deal. Family Life Blended is part of the Family Life Podcast Network, helping you pursue the relationships that matter most.